Welcome back. Wasn't that a nice break? You know, it's good to take a break every now and then. I had several questions. You'll notice on your profile, and this is the nice thing, you get 21 pages of information. There's the D, which is decisive. The high I is the interactive. The S is the stable. And the C is the cautious. Well, think about this. The high D, what are the characteristics of a high D? Well, usually they're kind of moving around. Sometimes they can be a little bit demanding, they're driven, they're forceful, they're daring, they're determined. Well, what does that sound like? Sales. It sounds like several areas, does it not? Now, what's the low end of it? Now, think of a D on the low end. Deliberate, agreeable, mild. Well, that's not a D. Well, it is, but that's not going to be what you're going to recognize. You're going to go to the next one, interactive, because something else is driving it. So what's interactive? Well, that's the high I. They get their energy from people. Introverted, extroverted, okay? We need both in our world to make it happen, okay? Some people are literally both. Some people really tend to get their satisfaction from completing a task. That's more the high S and the high C. So hold on that for a moment. But think of the high I, gregarious, persistent, inspiring, enthusiastic. Well, if you're going to have a party, you want to always have a high I. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Sociable, poised, charming, convincing, reflective, matter of fact, reserved, introspective. That's the low end of the I. Okay, that always makes you curious. Then what else is going to pop up? Then it might be the high S. And we have a couple individuals here that are high S. They're patient. I see someone pointing to someone else. Isn't that amazing how they do that?
He doesn't take credit.
They're patient. They're passive generally. They're complacent. Now, none of these are really negative because these are the people that will stay and work diligently at something. It takes a different kind of skill set. Stable, consistent, steady, outgoing. They are team people. That's the person you want on your team. They're going to be faithful. They're going to be the last one to let a job go by. And they're not going to do that. They're going to stay and finish it. It's kind of interesting. Now, what are the low ends of, well, think of someone like that. The lowest one is spontaneous, chaotic, active, restless. That's not that person at all. They're pretty calm. They don't like getting into that process. Does that make sense? But they can learn to if they have to. High C. Finally, we're getting to the high C. Well, they're cautious, perfectionistic, systematic, careful, analytical, orderly, neat. Do you think maybe I need someone like that to help me out? I need a secretary like that. Someone, right? Or two or three. I don't know. I'm not that. But it's kind of amazing, isn't it? What a difference. But we're all a combination of these from our life experiences. Now think of this. Carl Jung, back in the early 1900s, brilliant psychologist who did more really sound research than anyone else of his time, and even today is considered one of the two or three greatest. A few years after him, one of his students, Dr. Marsden, in 1928, wrote a book called The Emotions of Normal People. That's us, right? And that book is all about the disc. and he analyzes each part of it. It'd be interesting read. The Emotions of Normal People, 1928. Then what happened? Well, slowly it made its way by Dr. Geiger. Matter of fact, I trained with him at one time. In 1960-61, he began to use it, and it was like he had to scratch out the symbols. It was really pretty primitive, and you had to add it all up yourself and so forth. But the interesting thing about it, today or even back then, I got involved in it in the 70s, I could take a profile of anyone here. I could talk to you for probably an hour and a half about your profile. And if you were sitting and listening, I know that'd be really boring, but if you were, you'd say, each of those profiles is distinctly different. They are. Back to how different we really are. See, we don't appreciate that. And that's where we have some difficulties. I think it'd be good to get a question or two, and then I'm going to slip into a little more in the generations.
How would you compare this with the Johari window?
Johari window is super. I wish I had I could draw it up here, but I really can't. You know, that's how I get in trouble sometimes. I would use like a magic marker. I won't do that, but you know what I mean. Johari window, if you think of a window with 4 panes, are you with me? It's hard to do justice to this, but I will try. Most of us don't get beyond the 1 pane. Okay? And what's there? Well, it's our arena that we're in. The arena that we're in is where we're dealing with life. And if we're threatened in our arena, our mask will go up. And in a sense, our arena gets smaller and smaller. And we're not very happy. Now, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Some parts of my arena you share. The mask, you're the only one that knows what's behind it. Now think about this. I remember doing this many times, where I take the 4 windows, remember there's only one that's being used, and then I shift the whole drawing so that all 4 windows are in 1 pane now. Are you with me? So what do you have? Well, your arena is huge, but then you're stepping into your unknown areas, your blind spots. And this is what I have done often with companies, work with individuals with a 360 profile where they're evaluated by colleagues above them, on their level below them, anonymously, and you end up with a 35-page summary of everything about that person. It's the greatest learning experience they ever have because they can make a huge change. Because they understand for the first time in their life their blind spots that they've been afraid of. And then the last part of that window, Ken, great question, is unknown potential. Most people in our world don't do that. When you kind of think of it, only 23% of the population have an internal locus of control. They learn and they do life from inside. The vast majority, that's going to make me happy, that's going to make me happy, is something out there that comes in here. Doesn't make them happy for very long. So the vast majority of people do not think like you all. You all have that internal locus of control. That would be an interesting discussion further. Great question. Now, generations. Think about this. in every generation, if you go back to the traditional people generation, and you're going back, this is going back to World War I. Of course, these people were not high in technology. They communicate only on the telephone, right? They love mailing letters, getting letters. Are you with me? That's how you communicate it, or on the phone. Nothing wrong with that. What their values? Oh, very honorable, long-term career. They would not change careers. They follow rules. Okay. That's okay. I mean, the world was pretty productive, but it was somewhat limited. So that's no one in this room right now. Baby boomers. How many are baby boomers? We have a few. Okay. Civil rights movement, space, sexual revolution, assassination of really important people. We're living in a different world then. Woodstock, television. What's the workplace like? Well, it's different. If you're a woman, a glass ceiling. You can only go so far. It wasn't equitable. There's certain jobs you could do, flight attendant, teacher, nurse. Okay? That's really the way it was. The values, loyalty, sometimes workaholism, which we all know is worse than alcoholism. It's quite problematic. So there's a lot of pluses, there's some negatives, but in everyone. Okay, show of hands, Generation X. There we go. What about these people? Well, typical dual wage earners, husband and wife. Both are working, right? Latchkey kids, Sesame Street, Cold War, Challenger disaster, Watergate, Reagan, computers, the beginnings of all that. How are they in the workplace? Well, beginning to get into the virtual world, but just beginning to do so. Pretty independent, working toward teams. Conference call would be the greatest social networking beginning. What are the values? Well, that kind of depends on various things. Millenniums, we're talking about a very different group. Definite skill sets of computers. They really understand things well. They want recognition. They want someone to pat them on the back for each accomplishment. That's okay. They want to feel good about their life. They don't want to become, and they will not become, workaholics. They have other interests in life. They have some unique skills. Now, we all know some millenniums. They're also entrepreneurial. They like a positive work environment. They usually have a high education. Now, you think we're at the end. There's Generation Z. And then there's the Alpha generation. And those are the very young people. They have a digital way of understanding what the millennials understand. And they have some great attributes, but they want to enjoy their work rather than to be used or not rewarded properly. So perhaps in a future opportunity, we'll talk more about all of these. Remember, probably in any work situation, there's 3 generations. And the tendency is, that person's an old fuddy-dud. That person's a millennial. That person's Generation X or Z. What are you thinking of? The negative. You want to think of the positive. What do they bring? Like the disc. What do they bring to me so that we as a company can become the best? We are all called to greatness. That doesn't mean lights, cameras. It does mean greatness. And to the world that we are in, we make a difference because we are different. And we always will be different. And it's an honor to be different. and to appreciate yourself and to appreciate others and learn how to want to know more about them rather than push them away, because it's really all about changing the world for the better. We're all pretty small people to do that, but it's all done by people like us joining together. Very much like polio, Rotary Club. When I first started in Rotary Club 40 years ago, polio was the number one disease in every country of the world. This year, polio basically does not exist. All done by one club, number one foundation. That's what they put their major money toward throughout the world. We're pretty powerful, are we not, when we make up our mind what we want to do. Thank you all. Appreciate your attendance. Great audience. I know you're going to enjoy the profile, and I know you're going to enjoy being in your generation because it has great things to offer.